Alright, let's get this way. Why am I not rendering? Now I'm rendering. Let's get this train wrecker rolling. Good morning, Leon7500, CJ Twin 2, you fell for 23, Valence the Voyager, Oddly Art, Magpie 0928, Cool Boy Mew, VTuber Gator, Order of Dusk, Buzzcut Games, and Hirola Delor. VTuber talking about politics, I mean, it's usually not a thing, obviously. But, you know, there's no reason it wouldn't be a thing. It's not like getting involved in the political sphere has ever led to any sort of major consequences for anyone, right? There's never been a bad thing that's come from that sort of thing. Right? I mean, I can't think of any. Right? Ah, good to hear you have the right wrong attitude, Boomgar. Good to hear. So, yes, political events. I mean, it should be pretty obvious what we're here to discuss. It's been, like, all over the news. It's been here everywhere all the time. It's been probably one of the most significant events that's, happened in your lifetime. That's right. I'm going to discuss the splitting of the Seishoseki in Japan. So for those of you who, haven't been paying attention and don't know what the news is about this, God, where would I even start with this? I suppose the best place to, selling water filters to us, that's not a bad idea. I do need to figure out some merch. But, yes. The most important political event that's happened in the past several weeks has been the splitting of the Seishoseki. And yes, this is in Japan, Magpie 0928. Plan on studying in Japan next year? How fucked am I? Probably not, but I'll get to that later. I want to cover the history of this thing real quick. So for those of you who don't know, Seishoseki, the Killing Stone, is said to be the stone in which the, yes, more important than anything going on in the world. Nothing else really matters. There's nothing exciting or important happening aside from this. It's fine. It's fine. Those of you who don't know about this, basically, there's 3 great yokai in Japan, is what they're called. 3 things that caused all sorts of horrible disasters, and one of them was sealed inside this stone. Now, this is a picture from 2016. This is the same stone, right here, over on the left, from just a few weeks ago. As you can see, it's a little bit split in half. Which, good sign, good sign. And, apparently water damage had been accumulating and slowly penetrating deeper and deeper into the rock. And about when the water damage was, about halfway through, we had, this image of Tamamo, probably, appearing in the clouds above the area. Which, that's a good omen. Very good omen to have this sort of thing appearing in the clouds. Definitely not a sign of nothing. But, I guess probably the best place to start is at the beginning with who the heck this chick is. I'll put this down, go to this one. So, Tamamo no Mae was not her original name. In fact, she was not even originally a yokai. But, Spooky Skull, no, not quite. The big circle up there is a Rymant, and she herself is in the middle with the fox ears. But anyway, Waifu and Fate Extra. Ooh, I'm not going to touch that yet. But hold on to that thought, VTuber Gator, because that's going to be important later. So, Tamamo no Mae is not the name she started with. It was a name she picked up later on, back in, oh god, what was it, 8th century? 9th century? 6th century? Somewhere around there, over 1,000 years ago. Probably about 1,000 years. I think it's 6th century, it might be, I don't have, notes for this. This is mostly going off memory. She was a Chinese consort. Destroy the world as a VTuber? God, if only. Known as, what was it, Daji? Daji? I think it was Daji. Who was a consort to the, emperor of the Shang dynasty. Who, how do I put this delicately? Was a big fan of public torture orgies, I guess would be the best way to put it. Like, torturing people to death while also throwing orgies. Had all sorts of, fun little things that she did to torture people. Like, she saw a peasant walking across some ice without having it bothered his bare feet. And so, she, ordered his feet chopped off so she could examine them. Asked for, saw a pregnant woman and demanded she be cut open so she could examine what it was. Stuff like that. Just torturing people for fun. Ritual cannibalism, I think, at some point, although it might have been later. And, yeah, unsurprisingly, her actions led to the Emperor getting politically isolated from everyone, and them saying, yeah, this shit's fucked up, let's not have this happen. Hey, Simple Walker 32, and good morning. Also to Delinquitch and DJ Discotheque.
Hope you're well.
And, where was I going with this? Right. Talking about the Zhao Revolution. No, we're not there yet. We're still before the Zhao Revolution when the Shang Dynasty fell. Also, good morning, Professor J. Volts. But yes! Yeah, she did all of that, and the dynasty fell, and she got away semi-scot-free. Semi-scot-free. She ran from the collapse over to India. Took a different... no, wait. No, that's not what happened. She died during the Shang Dynasty collapse. But, that's correct, Soroshu, I am. She died during the Shang Dynasty, but her malevolence lived on as a yokai. So, she's sort of this thing that's halfway between a proper human and a spirit. The Zhao replaced the Shangs, we talked about the same thing. It's minutia, don't worry about it. And this evil, wicked spirit, went to India. And seduced the local lord there. Yes, the evil spirit rock went there and pretty much went back to the usual stuff. Cannibalism, convincing the king to kill a bunch of priests and children. Talked as a consort of the king, got him to kill his wife, yada yada yada. Interestingly though, the king, instead of the king falling into a horrible collapsed with all the, how do I put this? Instead of the king falling into a collapse with his reign ending, he moved away from her, like, emotionally and taught Buddhism, at which point she no longer had control over him, and she went onto a boat to Japan after that. Or did she go back to China first? I think it was, China, then India, then Japan. In Japan, she spent a couple of centuries doing God knows what, and took the form of, God, was it a child? It was a child. Got her way into the royal courts, maneuvered her way through the royal court to get to consort of the emperor once again, because she has a type, and that type is people that are very, very powerful. And the emperor suddenly started getting sicker, unsurprisingly, because she was doing bad things that she always does. Her plans this time seemed to be to kill the emperor and take all the power for herself, because she had managed to maneuver herself as the lead consort, but a Japanese diviner was able to determine that she was the source of the emperor's illness. And had this whole thing, this whole banishing ritual that yokai could not do, but humans could. So at the end of it, she had to flee because she was just not able to do the ritual. That's just how it'd be when dealing with spirits. There are certain things that they cannot do, which is a good way to identify them. So she fled again. But she didn't really have a good way out of Japan. So a huge freaking army came after her, started attacking her, chasing her down. She kept using her magic to escape, to create illusions, yada yada yada. Up until the point she got basically pinned down with nowhere to go. And one of the soldiers in the army had a dream. She appeared before him in his dream, begging him to spare her the next day. He refused and shot her with an arrow, and she died. But did not simply, turn into a corpse. She turned into that rock, which is the Seshoseki, which was filled with so much hideousness and malevolence that anyone who touched it would be struck dead. And being the person that she is, and her nature of destroying empires, Japan pretty much quickly devolved into a civil war afterwards. This was the end of the Heian period and the rise of the shoguns, and yeah, pretty much the same shit that happened in Japan. I think she went to China twice. There are two empires that she collapsed over in China. So it was China, India, China, Japan, pretty sure. And that pretty much covers up the history of the rock up until this point. That's right, Avella and Avicii were talking about politics. It can only wend well. You are absolutely correct. And good morning. And that pretty much covers the history of that rock up until, when was it? Was it a century later? I think it might have been a century later. A couple of centuries later. Anyway, at some point after this may be how do I put this? What's the word I'm thinking of? Not anachronistic, apocryphal story of a Buddhist priest exorcising the stone by giving it funeral rites and giving her a chance to repent. But there's no easy way to determine if that actually happened. There's not, a whole lot of eyewitnesses. There's not, a whole lot of historical evidence of these empires collapsing and whatnot. So, whether or not that happened, I can't personally say, but that's going to be important for later. Don't let this lady get into, she's going to get caught into CPT. No, she is not going there. So I want to point out something specific about her nature. I said at the start of this that she was a human that became a yokai after death. This is why she became known as one of Japan's top 3 yokai, because all 3 of them did that. All 3 of Japan's top 3 yokai started off as a human and became a yokai after death or some sort of event. And this is important, because a pure spirit, a pure yokai, does not have an easy way to act upon the material world. One of the big limitations of being non-physical is that you can't do physical things. This does not mean necessarily that they are the most powerful spirits, just that they have the most obvious and direct effects on the world, and thus some of the worst reputations. Exercising a rock with a treadmill and weight bench seem pretty wide, I can't even see. Yes, if you possess a physical thing, you can enact your will more directly upon the material world. That should seem pretty obvious, but, where was I going with this? I don't have much practice doing Zatsudas. I thought this would be a good chance to build up more experience with it. Anyway. So yeah, she was haunted with the Seshoseki. She, may or may not have gotten exercised. Oh, I forgot to turn on music. Let me turn on music real quick. Let me put that on. That's a bit loud. Put it like this. Alright, good. And after the Seshoseki, Heian War, okay, right, I was discussing the nature of yokai. Yes, non-corporeal spirits have a difficult time enacting their will upon the physical realm. And this is why the 3 yokai of Japan are so widely known, because they weren't complete spirits, they were partially human. I wouldn't say that they're probably necessarily the most destructive forces that have acted upon Japan in terms of spirits, but they're definitely the most overt, because they can act the most overtly. And this is something that I want to keep in mind. A lot of the stuff that makes things the worst is stuff that you can't actually see. Because you can't see it properly and understand it properly, you can't react to it to intervene with it, and you couldn't send an army after it. When a demon can't get the job done, just get a human. Maybe. Anyway, I want to talk about a couple of things prior to the rock breaking. I mean, I already mentioned the weird sign in the clouds. I don't think I have a thing that can... I need like a mouse cursor or something that shows up on the recording. Yes. Of this whole raiment, which is the big circle thing, and the shape of the kitsune in the center. Or a pyro, maybe. But that is not all that has foretold her coming, believe it or not. That's one of the ones that's most obvious and that, you know, a lot of attention on Twitter and whatnot. But, how do I want to phrase this? I have several associates, let's call them, with more than their fair bit of experience with the mystic arts and prophecy. People that tend to have an incredible knack for spellcraft to the point that they can self-teach them. They can just teach themselves what they need to know to get the job done. They don't actually need tutors. These are people with absolutely incredible talent for this sort of stuff. Billy Bob the Wise and Terrible. Essentially, yeah. And, several of them, prior to the rock breaking, were reporting very interesting dreams that all had similar threads winding between them. Images of a girl who had fox ears and a tail showing up, almost always described as a older woman, usually between the ages of 30 and 40 as far as they could tell. That was extremely attractive, in their words. And during these dreams, they were aware that she had a fox ears and tail, but they just didn't seem important, which is actually usually the way most enchantment and illusion spells work. It's way easier just to get people to see something and not care than it is to get them to not see it. So that checks out for what I'm perfectly aware of. It's basically just a magician's trick in the term of the mundane sense. Just, you know, enhanced with a bit of magic. Now, one of these in particular caught my attention. He was having dreams, not just one dream. Damn, that's older now, wake up, John Joyce, feel great about what I've done in my life. One particular dream, series of dreams, about a stage play, a Japanese stage play. Which, how do I put this? Was portraying the events of the life of Tamamo. It was not exactly flattering for her story. It didn't show her, obviously, as a good person because she was murdering people and whatnot. But it also didn't exactly show her as a pure villain with nothing but hatred in her heart. Mostly just being kind of a moron. Which, honestly, that checks out with my experience with spirits. One thing I've found about spirits is that they tend to be just generally along the lines of selfish jerks. Pretty much the same as humans, and in the same proportions. they're just kind of jerks rather than like properly evil like 90% of the time, but when you're writing down stories of stuff, you tend to pick the one that's going to get repeated the most. So a lot of nuance is lost. So things like, someone doing good things sometimes gets thrown out of the wayside to portray them as some sort of super megalomaniacal villain with no moral ambiguity in there. Aren't most spirits human-derived? That's really hard to quantify and kind of messy and a huge whole thing that I'd have to do like on an entirely separate thing. But kinda. But not at all at the same time. At the same time, just not at all. It's like, it's complicated. Hanger list. I don't know what that is. Anyway. This stage play was portraying the events of her life, not obviously as a hero or a villain, but just mostly as just kind of a shitty person. And at the end of it, he was brought to a rock by one of the actors, all of which who had, fox ears and a tail, obviously. Brought to a rock, which he later realized was the same shape as this Sesshouseki over here. And had a conversation that he can't remember with, again, older woman in her between 30s and 40s, very attractive, which is what everyone else was dreaming about. Can spirits get annoyed with each other? Yeah. Like, the thing is, people think, like, the spiritual stuff and yada 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 is all sorts of complete mysterious nonsense of no laws and all sorts of, like, crazy stuff going on that make no sense and follow no rules, but nah, it's pretty much just the same bullshit. You're just gonna still be even after you're gone, you're still gonna be dealing with lazy assholes that just kind of suck at their job and half-ass everything. That's just how it be. People are just generally lazy jerks everywhere. And I think that's about it for the signs that were seen before her escape. Man, I'm blowing through these a lot faster than I was. That's like half my notes down already. So I'll be a grumpy, hellspawn, and lazy? Pretty much. Like, a lot of spirits that are widely known as malevolent aren't necessarily, like, super malevolent. They're just sort of, like, jerks that don't want to deal with people. Like, imagine if you're just chilling out. Like, imagine yourself being someone who doesn't like socializing and whatnot, doesn't like going out and going to parties or whatnot. And then some random asshole forces his way in through your door and demands your attention for a while. You're just gonna tell him to fuck off, maybe screw him over for being so rude and demanding your attention when you didn't want to give it, and get back to what you were doing. And those people, and that's kind of just how it be. The spirits aren't just things to be called on whenever it's convenient. They have their own agendas, their own beliefs, they do their own things. And they don't like being treated rudely. Pretty much the same as people. And that's the big, horrible, depressing secret about the spirit world and the afterlife. It's just the same bullshit all over again. Brochured people so I can read. What? Anyway. The reason I bring this up is because there is one very, very important key difference between the physical realm and the spiritual realm. Well, I say physical realm and spiritual realm as if they were singular. There's a bunch of them, and it's more of a sliding scale and a spectrum than just, yes and no. Give me a blessing to only future cure my sick mother. Hello, that door was right? Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. Imagine you're just doing whatever, and some guy comes in and demands you cure his sick mother, or, like, get him the job. Who wants to deal with that shit? They don't. Give him a gift. Give him an offering to make it stuck less. Make sure to time it when it's, like, after their equivalent of lunchtime so that they're already in a good mood. It's basically just politeness that gets you where you need to go. Anyway, the reason I bring this up is the difference between spirit, because there's a major difference between more physical realms and more spiritual realms, and it is a spectrum rather than just a yes and no. The more physical and densely material a world is, with Earth being one of the prime examples of something that's extremely physically dense, the easier it is to change your nature. There are a lot of spirits who specifically come to the material realm to change their habits more easily. think all of those people that you know who make like New Year's resolutions or like swear to quit smoking or drinking or, you know, improve their way they treat people or all that stuff, and how they just constantly fuck that up, and how they just can't do it, and how they just fail at it over and over and over again and never improve. These people are living life on easy mode when it comes to changing their nature. Trying to, like, say, quit drinking or cigarettes or whatever is way harder the further away you get from Earth. And this is important. Because... how do I put this? How do I put this in a simple, easy, accessible way? Tamamo, while trapped in a rock, wasn't exactly purely material. It would be easier than some to change her nature, but much more difficult than it would be for a human to change their nature and habits. And it's fucking hard for, they mess up, yes, that's the thing. The degree and rate and frequency with which humans constantly fuck up trying to change their ways and beliefs and attitudes and things in life is incredible. It's very difficult to change your nature at all, despite being human and therefore playing life on easy mode. But no, it's even harder for spirits, and Tamamo was more spirit than human when she was in the rock. And this ties back to the apocryphal Buddhist exercising her thing, which may have just been a marketing gimmick that got out of hand. Because even if he truly did exercise her, it would be extremely difficult for her to change her nature. She would still almost definitely always fall back into her old habits. If it is true and he succeeded, then it may change the result or the consequences of her habits, but her habits themselves would probably still sit. And again, I really do want to have this hammered in and made clear. Human habits are the easiest time changing. Everything else has it worse. If you are a human on Earth, you have the easiest time possible changing your habits, and everyone else just wishes they could be you when they're causing themselves pain and misery from their stupid habits that they haven't broken. And the thing about this with Tamamo is that, now that she's escaped, you can almost definitely expect her to do the things that she's always done. Carefully navigate her way into the halls of power of whatever form of power she has, or whatever forms of power are available to her, and almost definitely do stupid shit that brings ruin to the people that are in charge. And the thing about that, now, this might be a bit of a controversial political statement on this stream about controversial politics, but I don't think it's unreasonable to say that the people in charge probably don't have your best interest in mind. Regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum or what you believe in, I think most people can probably agree to that, and even if they can't, then I'm going to have to ask you, are the people in power someone who even know your fucking name, dude? Do you really think they care that much? The dude who said you make reports was probably making shit up. He might not even exist is the thing. Like, the monk was called Hammer, and he hit the thing, and supposedly fragments of it flew off everywhere in Japan and became used in occult rituals for, like, fortune and whatnot. But that would also be like a really good marketing term. You could just say like, yeah, I have like this awesome rock from this legendary rock that you can use to bring yourself good luck, and you can make money off of that. It's the same thing as apple a day keeps the doctor away. The entire story about her being purified might just be a big marketing scam. And I know that sounds ridiculous to discuss when dealing with spirits, but that's literally how it is. No, seriously, Aldiard, his name literally translates to hammer. And he hit the rock with a hammer, and the pieces flew all over Japan, and people started selling them. Supposedly. But I know enough about human nature and the way humans act to assume that this is something someone made up. Because it would be really, really easy to sell rocks and make a huge profit. Like, that is such a good, convenient... This is such a great story. It's snake oil. It's snake oil, but with rocks. So whether or not the monk existed and whether or not any of this happened, who knows? I would lean on the side of probably not. Because It's marketing. It sounds so much like a marketing scheme. Almost literally just rock oil. Due to recant her previous acts, the Morse of speaking was probably making shit up. Yeah, that's okay. Power would be anywhere in the world. Would that power be anywhere in the world? What power is Simple Walker 32? If you're talking about her, from what we can tell from the old legends, which probably are more true than not true, probably, she does have, they call me the hammer. She does have limitations on how far she can move and how quickly she can move and the methods of movement that are available to her. Because she is partially material, partially spiritual, because of her human origin, she is limited to methods of transportation that would work for a human. Which is why she couldn't simply appear in Japan or will herself to Japan, but had to take a boat to Japan. Now, how many boats do you know about going from place to place in the modern world? And if I want you to think, how many boats are there going between places? And how frequently are they going between places? And you might think that there might not be like that many because of like cruise ships are only a couple of things, but it would be ridiculously easy to get on like any sort of cargo ships. Exactly, Simple Walker. I would be shocked if she was willing to go onto a cargo ship and get that stuff done, because that seems... She's the high class type, right? She rides on expensive boats. She'd be more likely to take a cruise ship. But if she was desperate, she could absolutely ride a cargo ship from anywhere to basically anywhere. Hey, little lady red. That's the thing, Delinquitch. Borders are closed on paper. They're not really actually closed from what I understand. Like, I've checked with a couple of people. A lot of the expensive luxury cruise liners are still running because their rich people want them to run, therefore their will gets imposed. Like, that's how the world works. If you have the gold, you make the rules. What about planes? Planes would be another great example. She might take like a first-class airliner from place to place. And, where would she go is probably the important question to consider. Would she simply choose to remain in Japan? Also, good morning, little lady red. This cat is my cat. You're not having this cat. This is my cat. Actually, if you're gonna come in here and demand something, tell me what I'm getting in exchange for it. This is good practice for dealing with spirits. If you come in here and demand something, they'll tell you, no, go fuck yourself. Would she trust a plane? I don't know. Like, I can't answer that. I don't know her. I've not spoken with her. I've not communed with her. I don't know much in the way of details for it. You give me money, but what are you giving me in exchange for this? Come on. All of my neighbors' firstborn children? I mean, what the hell am I gonna do with children? They're loud, they're noisy, and they make a mess. Why would I want children? Come on. That's not how you make an offering to a spirit and get them to do things. You gotta give them something that they want. Red, I just said you have to give me something that I want. I am not interested in any girl under 6 foot. Actually, oddly, Art, that is actually a really, really good example. For example, there's a bunch of Hindu deities that are a huge fan of ice cream sandwiches in particular as offerings. Ganesh, for instance. He is not just a big fan of ice cream sandwiches. God, what is the specific flavor? It's not like French vanilla, but it's some weird, like, variation of, like, vanilla caramel. That is his personal favorite, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been a while since I've done anything with Ganesh. But yes, stuff like ice cream sandwiches is absolutely a thing that they want. Genuinely and unironically. What a spirit wants, humans being physical, these are exactly. And spirits can actually taste physical offerings without actually consuming the essence that humans need to survive. So you can give them the thing, give them first taste of the offering, in this case the ice cream sandwich, and then afterwards eat it yourself. It's very similar to, you know, saying grace before a meal in Christianity. Cool scam or cool commission. See, now you're talking, little lady red. That skeleton in Last Unicorn. I don't know Last Unicorn. I don't watch movies. I'm aware that's a movie, though. I've been told that I sounded like him. But, yes, what does spirit want? Humans being physically offer physical stuff? Yes, they do want physical stuff. They can't, you know, physically interact with it, but they can taste it. And, where's I going with this? Got backtracked into something. About offering spirits and cutting deals to spirits. Right! Whether or not she wanted to get onto a boat or an airplane, I honestly can't make a judgment there. Like, I have not poured deeply enough into the specific minutiae of each of her legends to be able to tell you what exactly she does or does not want and what her personal preferences are. I probably could do that at some points, but I don't speak Japanese or Chinese. And I would want to pour over the languages in the original because there might be some small hints there that get lost in translation. So, I don't know, she might want airplanes, she might not want airplanes. She's used to literally being treated like royalty. Mammoth cheese does in the Northeast, gift from Jefferson. That would be a good offering. Powerful men regarding her history, true. But her methods of transportation, historically, have also been... Oh, have you missed this, little lady red? Okay, so this picture to my right here. Am I right? Yeah, it's someone's right. It's my left, it's your right. I think? Yeah. Could spirits interact with the internet, giving internet its information? See, that's a really interesting subject that would be its entire own stream to even be able to discuss that. But signs point to yes, believe it or not. There's some other interesting implications about that, with spirits being able to incarnate as a computer without having to interact directly with the veil that forbids them from interacting directly with the world, as a sort of BLJ through the rules of spirituality, but that's its own thing. The circuit boards of Jones and Twitter, that's actually a good example of it. It might work that way, if they wanted it to. But you would probably want to have to invite them into the circuit boards to have it work properly. Do many like to hang out? How do I know, dude? Like, come on. AIs are actually spirits. Mostly correct, Red Robotic Man. But again, that would be a subject for a different stream. Anyway, so she's probably, because of the interconnectedness of the world nowadays, she can pretty much get anywhere overnight. There is no limit to who she has access to, and there is essentially no limit to where she can go and wreak her havoc. So, the question there becomes, what havoc will she wreak, and what are the results of it, right? Pour one out for Tay. Yeah. I've heard about that. I think that happened while I was dead, though. Where's I going with this? Right. So the logical places for her to go are influencer. Influencers are not her thing. Rock up, what country is going to war now? That's the thing, Boomgar. In her time period, when she was not inside a rock 1,000 years ago, she would have been interested in emperors and kings because they're the ones that wielded the most power over the world and had the nicest things. That is not necessarily the case anymore. Sure, presidents, prime ministers, and princes have all sorts of wonderful things and power and influence, but a lot of them receive orders from people higher up on the authority chain who have even more money. And, you know, I can't get into too much detail on that without getting immediately banned off Twitch because of how much influence they have over the control of information, although their control of information over the internet is pretty lax. Hey, the Minimaster, yes, Demon Rock Talk. But if she had to pick a target, it would probably not be a president, because presidents aren't the ones who are necessarily in control of everything. There is a lot of influence and shadow influence that goes on behind the scenes. Yeah, she has a lot of options. And she would probably go towards any of the financial dynasties that have a lot of soft power, but not a lot of hard power. Like, I mean, this is probably my favorite example of what I mean by this when it comes to the banking dynasty. I think it was a Rockefeller who donated the land for the original League of Nations and wrote in his autobiography that the League of Nations would be the seat of power from which his children would rule the world with an iron fist. As you can tell from the fact that League of Nations dissolved, that's not actually how it worked out, but he explicitly says that that was his intent when he talks about that. Only figures without having influence on cigarettes. Exactly, that's the other thing. Bankers and businessmen, maybe. because they have a lot of soft power on the stage of geopolitics, but not necessarily a lot of hard power in the sense of being able to order armies. So that would come down to her preferences. Real powers, international finance, social engineers, contemporary academia. Yeah. And where she would go with that and what she would do with that, who knows? That's, again, going to come down to her personal preferences and tastes, because there are a lot of power. Like, a lot of people mistakenly think that there is just, a single will operating everything from behind the scenes, and I've been involved in that kind of stuff long enough to know that, no, it's mostly a lot of smaller people who have, a general idea of wanting to work together, but also trying to coalesce power underneath themselves. So it's hard to say exactly where she's going to end up. I personally don't know if she's going to go for a president or, say, a soft power source like a banker. Because this ties into the idea of destructive masculine versus destructive feminine. What Tamamo does is... How do I phrase this without getting canceled off of Twitch? The concept of the destructive feminine is something you can find in a lot of Eastern religions. It is essentially what she does. I forget if it's yin or yang that's the destructive force. But either way, it is mostly indirect power, it is mostly chaos, it is mostly, it's like Kali from Hindu mythology. Dictators are those seem likely. I mean, maybe, but those dictators don't have exactly tremendous amounts of influence compared to the whole state of the world. And that becomes kind of an issue, what's the balancing act here? What would be her top priority? That would come down to what she knows, what she wants. That's her decision to make, ultimately. You can't really point to a single person and say, yes, this person runs everything. That's not how it works, unfortunately. God, where's it going with this? Before I got backing up in my brain, Nope, I totally lost my plot thread where I was going with that. God damn it. If only I had to rewind 2 minutes on my own brain and stream. But yes, where she's going to go is going to be ultimately up to her decision whether she prefers masculine versus feminine energies. So she represents the destructive feminine in a lot of ways, being that she seduces her way into power and that she causes damage from behind the scenes. But immunity and the ability to commit atrocities might be enough. See, at a certain level of power, you have immunity and the ability to commit atrocities. You just have to be more covert about it. But, let's not get into that, because I don't want to get deleted off Twitch for speaking too much about that stuff that I got tangled up with a while back. God, where was I going with this? Right. So, destructive feminine is mostly, petty cruelty, especially targeting the vulnerable. And of course, it could be actually described as dictators, despots, And the thing about that, is, as the destructive feminine, she may be sort of magnetized to the more masculine energies, a yang to a yin. Which means that she might have a preference for harder powers, which would prioritize people in direct command of armies, generals, kings, prime ministers, presidents. Which is a possibility. But I can't say that for sure. I expect her to lean more towards that, since she tends to go for people with a lot of direct military power, rather than simply wealth. Rather than simply wealth and influence, let's say. But again, where she's going beyond that, that doesn't really narrow it down. And since she wants to be, the richest and most powerful and in control, wants to influence the Chad powers, sort of a good way to phrase it, actually. Not exactly the one-to-one measure, but that is a closer idea to what she sort of represents in the more abstract spiritual. And where you would go for that? I mean, there's two pretty obvious power bases that you'd want to sneak in there. It would be America and China. So if she's gonna pop up anywhere, that's where she'd pop up. That's just intuitive sense, right? Those are pretty much the two places with the most power in the world, right? Well, the world. On Earth specifically, those are the two strongest earthly powers. In terms of military might, at least. You can make an argument for Russia, but... Been wanting to hang out on Winnie the Pooh's arm? I mean, she's not really attracted to physical appearances from what I understand. I could be wrong. Maybe she was just, like, super attracted to specifically physical appearances, and it just so happened that all of these rich dudes with huge armies happened to be, you know, really good looking. That's what you magnetized to, but I kinda doubt it. So, with that out of the way, I think that pretty much covers where we can expect her to go. Probably America or China. Probably going to work her way into someplace. Probably as, you know, a consort of some variety, because that's what she always does. But the result of those actions is going to be ambiguous. If it wasn't a marketing thing about the Seisho Seki, if it wasn't... If the Buddhist monk Hammer actually did go there, and actually did make her repent, well, her nature still wouldn't change. Spirits have a much harder time changing their nature than humans do. And you would expect her to simply follow most of her, natural habits, but... she might bring ruin. If it's true, then rather than simply bringing ruin and sowing chaos and death and destruction, she would be doing the exact same thing, but to unrighteous men. Instead of corrupting a righteous ruler into an evil one and destroying them, it's entirely possible that if the Buddhist funeral worked and went through, that she would be corrupting unrighteous men into self-destruction, making her a guardian spirit rather than a wicked spirit. But again, we can't verify whether or not that monk went and did that thing. It might have just been a marketing ploy. I'm on the theory of marketing ploy. No! She's not even Asian. From what I've understand from the dreams, she was always Asian. Like, visually Asian. Do you have any other interesting images in relation to potential signs that were coming besides that cloud you showed? Yes, I discussed that earlier. There were a bunch of people whom I trust on this stuff, who were having dreams of an Asian in her 30s to her 40s with fox ears and a tail, doing things similar to what she did with the man that was going to kill her, and that, not exactly begging for mercy, but getting them to act on her favor. Which, oh yeah, that's one of the things she can do. She can fuck with dreams, by the way, just heads up. And I think that pretty much roughly outlines what you can expect her to do. And... yeah, I think it pretty decisively narrows it down. The thing that I want to address as well, specifically, is countermeasures. Because, you know, she might be one of the 3 great yokai of Japan, but you know what took her down? You know what finally took her down and turned her into the rock? Getting shot with an arrow. Or was it 2 arrows? The point is some guy just shot her with arrows. Do magnets have effects on spirits? Probably, but not to any degree that you would expect more so from, its effect on humans. And don't pretend that humans cannot be affected by magnets. There's a lot of weird stuff that go on with your brain if magnets affect them. So, maybe, but not significantly. More arrows, more better. Right, exactly. But this runs into the countermeasure in that nowadays we have an entire system of arrow delivery that just completely blows everything out of the water compared to the ancient ages. I don't care how much a samurai master trains with a bow, how much of a Kyudo master they are. I don't care what a British longbowman does. They're still gonna lose out to AR-15s, AK-47s, etc., etc. Modern weapons have evolved to such a point. Yes, basically the Dark Souls method. That is actually a counter. Because again, she is not exactly a full spirit. She started off as a human and then became a spirit. She's mixed between the two. Nuclear variant bright things? I mean, that would also probably work, but that's way overkill. She takes the form of a fox or a person. Just you shoot it with gun or bullet, and you'll solve it. You don't even, they didn't even have, holy arrows to exercise her when she got rid of her in Japan. They just shot her with regular arrows. And that's pretty much all you'd have to do to actually have a countermeasure against her. Just get a handgun and put a couple of rounds in her, or get a semi-automatic and do it from a distance. That's all you really need to do to stop her. She is weak to direct violence because direct violence is a masculine energy. And she represents the destructive feminine in a lot of ways. None of this really matters then. See, that's hard to quantify. The thing is, she can lose to direct violence. How do you know who to level that direct violence against? I mean, you can probably use poisons against her, but poisons are more along the destructive feminine line than the masculine destructive. How do you know how to use the violence against? She's a shapeshifter. She can take different forms. She can change her appearance. She can change her age. She can change into different species. How do you know what to shoot? That's the issue. You cannot identify what to use hard power against if they're using soft power to prevent themselves from being an observable target to begin with. So, what do you want to look out for to be able to identify her acting in the world? Which, is actually pretty simple. You just gotta look for her doing her old tricks. Someone who is seducing their way into the halls of power. Someone who is, No, I guess that's pretty much it. Seducing their ways in the hall of power and making the people that have the hard power use it in ways that are destructive towards themselves and towards others. Such as, public violent murder orgies like she did over in China. Could she be taken out by normal disease? Probably not. Because the thing about things like her that are half human, half spirit is that they tend to be weird. They don't exactly fall into categories specifically. Some of them can be killed with direct violence, some of them can't be. Some of them need to be deceived, some of them need to be attacked directly. Usually it's an opposite to the masculine versus feminine energies that they have as the spirit form. So Tamamo in particular can be just taken out with direct violence because she is the destructive feminine. Shuten Doji, I believe. High sexual marketplace value women that haven't been enchanted by some sweet first. Yes! High sexual marketplace women, usually very intelligent. Well, not usually very intelligent. She would specifically be incredibly intelligent, incredibly socially adept. Not necessarily wealthy. Hey, Mercy Farron, I don't speak Russian. Half you one's gonna be weird. Look, I'm neither of those, alright? It's fine. But yes, an exceptionally high-value sexual marketplace woman who is incredibly intelligent, adept, and good at the, pretty much all forms of art. That is the characteristics that were shared between all of her forms and all of the people she seduced, and how she got her ways into the halls of power. Hey, Mercy Farron. So that's what you'd want to look out for. That's what you'd want to keep an eye on. If there is some, well, if her natural form that was showing up in dreams was that of an older woman, that of a MILF, there's no reason she would necessarily take that form in the physical when interacting with her stuff or their ability to disguise herself. So you can't even necessarily limit it down to, Asian MILF that's good at art and extremely intelligent, seducing her ways into the halls of power. The Asian and MILF parts are things that she can choose to not express. Does being an attractive VTuber count? Probably not. VTubers don't exactly have the power to launch nukes or things like that. Look, I've talked about this before, J-Volt. I've done actual exorcism work. I know how spirits work. I've got experience in this field. This is just a thing my family has had to do for a long time. But anyway, countermeasures, obviously the first one that I mentioned was violence. Direct physical violence would counter her because she is vulnerable to directly getting shot or stabbed or beaten or etc. the same way any other person would. She would just be very hard to target because she would use soft power and disguises to prevent herself from being a target to begin with. And you'd have to identify her ahead of time, which that's basically gonna take a diviner. You're gonna need someone with a knack for detecting spirits to actually figure out which one is her. Someone who can be made to become powerful in human society. What about them, Simple Walker? Biden could be So that's, how would you actually deal with her once she's been identified, but how do you identify her beforehand? Aside from being a diviner and those signs that I mentioned, things to look out for to eliminate the possibilities of where she could be. You want to have two things that you want to look out for, or two ways to insulate yourself from her soft power. The first one is, basically, she never, killed people on her own. She didn't cut off that peasant's feet herself. She ordered a soldier to do it. If you are in some position of enacting the violent will of people with authority, If there's particularly fucked up orders that you're being told to do, you can just say no and walk away. And that would very, very dramatically stymie her options and her ways to exert her will in the world. Maybe powerful to someone who already has power. There is no signs of her doing that. It's a possibility, there's no reason to expect it. She would continue her old habits, most definitely. It would be extremely rare for her to do something like that. But yes, the first countermeasure against her after, she loses to bullets, is just refusing to comply with wicked orders of people in positions of power. This would strip away her ability to exert her soft power, because that's how soft power works. Soft power gets the people with hard power, like soldiers or mercenaries or etc., to enact what the soft power wants. So being a terrible listener and disobeying authority is a good thing. I mean, in this case, maybe, actually. And that's one of the good ways to avoid giving her power and avoid having power exerted upon you by her. But there's also the second component of that, in that she could simply get some other patsy to do it for her. Should have been order followers in the first place. Yeah, order followers are what she relies on to enact her will. Which is the other half of how you would have to counter her if you're being targeted by her. You would need to personally be powerful enough to handle order followers. The people that she would order to mess up your life, or try to kill you, or have you executed, or tortured, or whatever, you would need to be physically powerful enough on your own to be able to defeat them. Which is a lot to ask in the age of modern warfare, because no amount of training and no amount of muscles will actually stop rounds from going through you. So it's going to be a bit difficult to deal with that, but if you know what you're doing, you can achieve something similar to that. Targeted by, who are we expecting her to target? I mean, she doesn't really have specific targets for cruelty. Typically and habitually, she would just go after random people that got her attention, such as someone. Again, to give an example of when she was a human, the Queen Daiji, the Consort Daiji, whatever. I don't know what the Japanese or Chinese term for this stuff is. Is that she saw a peasant who could walk over ice barefoot and not get bothered by it, so she ordered his feet cut off so that she could look at it. And that's kind of what she does. She is capricious, thoughtless cruelty, just acting on whims. Because that is one of the defining traits of the destructive feminine, and a good example of this would be to look up Legends of Kali. I'll actually put that name up here to make sure you can learn it good type. Let me select font, correct one. Kali. Yes, this is actually not visible. Let me give that an outline real quick. Outline. Why is default outline color white? Same as the thing. Put it at 20. Alright. Look at Kali as a great example of one of the forms of the destructive feminine, and understand that Tamamo will be behaving similarly. Could she be manipulated by another spirit? Probably. I mean, that's asking if someone who's good at manipulating can be manipulated. The answer is probably. Yeah, that's the other thing, J-Volts. Because a lot of the world has been so heavily feminized compared to what it would be, she pretty much can do whatever the fuck she wants. For all the fucked up shit Russia's doing in Ukraine, we possible that Steel already worked her way to power in Russia? No. Not statistically. A lot of the stuff, like, people think the Ukraine stuff is stuff that, just happened recently. You can find people discussing this and how this will all play out all the way back in 2014, and if you want to go a bit more abstract, all the way back to the 3rd century. So it's unlikely that she has any influence over that, which is why I'm not really talking about it, because it doesn't really matter to this. Anyway, where's I going? Right, so resisting hard power, because your methods are basically chaotic and chaotic cruelty for the sake of minor amusement rather than any sort of action or goal-oriented thing. She just does mean stuff because she enjoys it. There's a good chance that any random schmuck could be targeted by her for entertainment. Which runs into the other major countermeasure, which is a countermeasure versus virtually everything, which is don't draw attention to yourself. For instance, what you don't want to do is repeatedly say her name while thinking about her. Or be in the presence of people where she would expect her to be, such as the halls of power. Or, yes, or be an emperor. That's a good example. Or, write this down. Or, for instance, delivering a long sermon on countermeasures for her. Good morning, Conga. Yeah, that's not something that you want to do. It'll make you more likely to be targeted by her. I'm not worried about it. I have my own countermeasures. If I have, 30 dudes with guns coming at me and I've only got my hands, it's still about 50-50. Pretty much everything come out of the conflict, blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, I think that pretty much summarizes most of what needs to be done. People are getting out of the way to completely discard your advice to get noticed by a fox. Yeah, that's kind of how it be. And, another thing I want to address. Something that I've seen floating about in a couple of places. The comparison between her and Tamama no Mae from the Fate series. I mean, that's the thing, Boomgar. Yes, objectively, she is a very attractive person. That is her entire MO. Being an attractive person so that she gets into the halls of power. And attractive not just in the physical sense, but in an emotional sense, an artistic sense, and an intelligent sense. Yes, baby and nobody, don't call out your attention to her. It'll be fine. Fate Tamamo, yeah. Fate Tamamo is probably almost nothing like the actual one. There is the possibility of influencing her nature using Fate Tamamo, which, do I want to address that? Maybe I could address that. That might be a thing to address, actually. Yeah, I think I can include a quick lesson on that. Should I, though? It's kind of fun to say so. Well, I guess I can avoid looking into the specific things related to it. So, one of the basic components of... This is gonna break into Chaos Magic theory real quick. The basic components of magic is just having a ritual, an intent, and a symbol. That's all you need. The symbol could be anything. It could be, something you just drew. It could be some picture that you really like. It could be your VTuber model. A ritual is just something done that you do repeatedly and some sort of repetition and consistently doing the same thing over and over again. And intent is simply the knowledge and experience to summon up spiritual energies with the intent of influencing a specific aspect of some part of your life. Pretty much every single ritual from every single system of magic follows these three components. Chaos Magic takes it a step further and makes it so that pretty much anything can work for this, and you can whip up your own rituals on the fly. With these three components, you could theoretically create a ritual involving the symbol of Fate Tamamo, because that would be widely adopted, in order to influence the real Tamamo. Which would be extraordinarily difficult and not particularly potent, because, as I've said before, she is part material, part spiritual. If she was purely spiritual, this would work decently, and even if you wouldn't necessarily influence her, you could create... what's the term for it is an egregore, which is a spirit entity that is capable of acting out your will on the spiritual plane. So theoretically, you could create an egregore based on Fate's Tamamo in order to confront and attempt to consume what will probably lose the spiritual aspect of the real Tamamo. Where was I going with this? What's my conclusion for this? But it probably won't work as well as it would with most spirits, because she is part material. She is a human that became something evil and wicked. And I think that about summarizes. There's a lot of people out there who thought that might have been a good idea, using Fate Tamamo as sort of a ward against real one. But it's very unlikely to work, and more likely to get your ass killed because you're getting her attention on you. So I would recommend against it, and I would recommend, like not interacting with Fate Tamamo at all is probably taking it a step further than necessary, strictly. But, trying to conflate the two is probably self-destructive. Hey, J-Volts and Dusk. This is not about the Ukraine thing. That's Already been settled. That's been set in stone for the past 1800 years. It's not important. God, where was I going with this? Right, so you don't necessarily need to avoid all symbols of Tamamo, like fake Tamamo, but trying to conflate the two in your head is probably a bad idea. And I think that about summarizes it. I thought I would be talking more long about this, but I actually probably should have done a bit more review on her exact history, because I didn't do a whole lot of talking about it. But yeah, I guess that just about summarizes it. I guess to recap and finish off this stream, she was a human that became a spirit after death, got sealed in a rock. The rock is broken, so she's out and about. Her methods of transportation are physically limited by the way humans can transport. So if you are in some particularly remote region that is completely cut off from modern infrastructure, it's entirely possible she won't be able to affect you directly. She might be able to affect you indirectly by sending, I don't know, a guy on a plane to fuck with you, but she can't physically interact with you. Anything effective to stop her. Is stopping her a good idea? Yes, I was actually about to summarize back to that. She's probably going to some place with a lot of direct physical power over things, some place with a strong army, such as China or America, possibly Russia, but I doubt it. And the best countermeasures for her is kind of a tricky situation. She uses soft power rather than directly doing things, so she is extremely unlikely to be a target you can interact with directly. You'll be more likely to confront soldiers that she's sending after you than confront her herself. If you are able to identify her, which again would be difficult because she's a master of disguise, specializes in illusions, and wants to avoid confrontation at all costs, you can just kill her with violence. Regular-ass violence works on her. The problem is that all of her defenses are based around not getting spotted to begin with, taking mysterious forms, running away, using illusions to distract you, and not attacking you physically directly, but by having soldiers go after it. So should we just globally overthrow a current regime that see what all the pseudo-circles are cruel and mean girls among the current corporatocracy? I mean, yes, but that's neither here nor there. That doesn't have anything to do with Tamamo. And I think that about covers it. Yeah, you can just defeat her with violence. That is her weakness. Her weakness is direct violence. It is in every single scenario throughout her entire history. She was cast away from the current empire by, violence. See, that's the thing, Boomgar. Not necessarily. Previously, when she was known to an area, she had to flee to a different area because people would recognize her and her identity and be able to interact with that. So rather than directly interacting with that, they would, rather than directly interact with that? So she would have to flee to a different new regime, which is what she kept doing, which is why she eventually wound up in Japan, despite originating in China. So overthrowing a current regime that you suspect her to be in would cause her to go somewhere else. Hey, username not available 90. What's up? Good morning. And that, I think, basically covers it and her weaknesses. Like, the problem with soft power is that it's generally fairly difficult to directly counter, because the whole purpose of soft power is not being directly counterable. You would want someone else with a fair degree of information gathering based soft power, such as someone specialized in divinations, like me, to be able to identify where she is and how she's acting. She went on a femininity overdose, exaggerated consort, cruelty, Valoros, what are you quoting to describe that? Because that is actually a really, really good pithy summary of it. She's a human on a femininity overdose is a very good... Couldn't make it as amazing as the original. Okay. I'd activate sub for free to all the Mario 64 ROM players. Oh man, that's awesome, actually. Because I did that at one point, and then I probably got a free sub. Nice. Modified thing that I see, Valoros. But, yes, that is a really good quote to put up on there. Let me copy and paste that, actually, real quick. That is really brilliantly phrased. Human on a femininity overdose. The negative femininity, particularly. negative, destructive, however you want to call it. Let me put that down real quick. Format word wrap. Yes, a walking ball of cruelty. Capricious cruelty, not targeted, directed, intentionality cruelty. That is a lot of emotes, goddamn. Oh, there's a Fumo in there too, nice. But, yes, she is capricious, she is cruel for no particular reason, and just causes problems. She's not going to be doing anything with great intentionality. That is the thing you need to realize about this. You're basically dealing with a drugged-out woman on an insane power trip, constantly causing problems. Is this just chatting? Pretty much, username. Pretty much. I'm just delivering a quick sermon on a recent spirit that got out over in Japan. I'm not currently doing Mario 64 or nothing like that. And I think this stream might have been shorter than I expected. But I guess that's mostly it. If anyone has any particular questions they want answered about this, I will be happy to do so before wrapping up, and even ramble about them at length. But, for now, I think that just about covers it, and her weaknesses and countermeasures. So is Japan just gonna sink after this rock breaking? Extremely unlikely. Japan does not have any direct military capacity. Proposed word, but 90% of the rest of the planet for the 21st century? Yeah! Yeah, imagine that, but like, the Giga Stacy version of that, essentially. No, I would expect Japan to pretty much be fine. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if she summoned up, like, Shootin' Doji or caused some other sealed yokai to break out. But it is entirely possible that Japan will... Should she ever get put back into the rock with a new one? Yes! There's in fact a really easy way to do that. What you do is you get a gun and you use gun on Spirit. She is weak to direct violence. You can make a new rock. Like, the rock is just a transformation that she took after getting killed. Giga Stacy next to a man with a nuke. Exactly. Imagine a high school petty mean girl who is just going to cause problems on purpose because it makes her feel good about hurting people. And she makes other people go along with what she wants, and this is in an age of nukes. If you vote for her, will she make Yoho real? No. She will not make Toho real. Oh, Jager MP3, thank you so much for the follow-out. I don't tell this to a lot of people, Jager. In fact, you're the only person ever told... Oh, that's rendering over that. I should fix that. Only person I ever told this to, but you're actually my favorite follower. That's right, my number one. Because, you know, MP3s are my favorite audio format. Fuck Flax. And, you know, Jaegers are... Jaegering is fun. Is that how do you fucking conjugate hunting in German? I don't know. I'm a big fan of hunting, though. Yes, violence is always one of the best options against her. That is what she is directly weak to. And you apply it enough and you'll get a new rock, because that is what that's what's gonna happen. The thing about her rock form is that thinking of it as her being sealed in a rock is not entirely truthful. She became the rock. The rock was her. Essentially, she was laying there and recovering from her wounds. And that would be pretty much how you'd make a new rock. You wound her badly enough that she has to do that. And yeah, she's not liable to be a threat to Japan. Japan does not have great emperors with tremendous influence over everything. Don't forget, it's also an alcoholic drink. That's true! But beyond that, I think that pretty much just covers it. I think that's pretty much everything. Yeah, that's... That other question hit me with them, but yeah, I think that about addresses everything. You can make her into a new rock by killing her in some way, and she'll have to recover from it, usually in rock, probably in rock form. She might do something different next time, but who knows. And she is unlikely to have much power over Japan in particular, because Japan does not have massive super emperors like we have nowadays. Japan is not particularly relevant in terms of hard power. It has a fair bit of soft power with its dominance over the entertainment industries, but it's not a master of hard power. With that said and done... Oh, one other thing I wanted to address. There's a superstition about leaving specific types of tofu out for kitsune to, like, curry their favor. And I want to specifically address that against her. I did not know that spiders have paws. I don't believe that spiders, in fact, do have paws. But one of the things you really want to do against her is not do that. Again, the easiest way to avoid having negative consequences from her is to not deal with her, and the best way to not deal with her is to not have her attention on you, and the way you have her attention on you is not by being anywhere near her. Trying to bait her out and curry her favor is literally just courting disaster. There is no reason to do that. You do not want to draw her in. It's just a bad idea. Do something that's just better off avoided unless you're really, really confident in your violence capacity. With that said and done, I think I'll be looking for someone to raid. Much shorter stream than I was anticipating. I was expecting to have at least 90 minutes of material, but like I said, a lot of it slipped through my brain when I was, well, metaphorical brain. I didn't have time, well, I did have time to read, but chose not to. So, let us see who is online. Probably some of the shout-out commands so they can see that I was doing the politics category. Periodic table, element, genic, science, name it, Gundam. Yes, I ran out of material faster than I expected, Magpie0928, and good morning, Yanomancer. So I will be raiding already, and remember, if you want to get a good idea of the habits that she's going to take, I'd recommend looking up Callie over here in the top right. Salad, Paladin, Nightshade, Polyalphanet, Corgi, Hobloom. You know, let's raid Woozle. And I'll be seeing you all tomorrow with more Sonic 06, the best Sonic game ever made. Past that, I'm not entirely confident what I'm going to be doing, but I do have some ideas. I am going to be doing a collab with Callie on Wednesday, as usual, where we'll be doing Yume Nikki. She specifically said this on her stream that she wanted to hear a guy's interpretation of the dream events because the only time she'd ever heard anything from it was, from, in her words, Menhera chicks. Because it's a Menhera chick, no VTubers are in danger. No more than any other random civilian would be. The thing about VTubers is that they have a lot of soft power, which is not what Tamamo magnetizes towards. But there's a good chance they'll just randomly get, like, killed or shot or tortured or anything else at the hands of Tamamo. So they're not in more danger than any individual that would be in danger. So it ultimately depends on where she's going. So who knows about that? Anyway, go raid Woozle. Raid message, do not tempt the fox. Alrighty, and I'll be seeing you all tomorrow with Sonic 2006. And get the heck out of here, you filthy sinners. Oh wait, I forgot to actually hit enter, hold on.